the everlasting God, the creator of all the earth, who never grows weak or weary. No one can measure the depths of his understanding. He gives power to the weak and strength to the powerless. Even youths will become weak and tired, and young men will fall in exhaustion. But those who trust in the Lord will find new strength. They'll soar high on wings like eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They'll walk and not faint.
Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Everything right now seems to be a little upside down in our world. Kids are out of school. In many cases, parents may be working from home. It's certainly not the norm right now. And these past few weeks really have given us, I think, a new way of looking at the world. Speaking of things being upside down, I can remember as a kid, we always had to find ways to entertain ourselves. And at the risk of sounding like an old geezer, when I was a kid, we didn't have video games. We didn't have the internet. We didn't even have cell phones. We either went outside and found things to do, or if we were forced to be inside, maybe because it was raining, we made up things to do. And I can remember at times, maybe it was out of boredom, but there were times where we would lean up against a wall and we would stand on our heads, and we would see how long we could do that. And I can remember how everything looked different by looking at the world upside down. It was definitely a different way of looking at the world. Now, I don't know if you've gotten that bored yet. We may have some parents who feel like standing on their heads after being home for several weeks now. But our theme this month is upside down. And if anyone in the history of the world turned things upside down and led people to see the world differently, it was Jesus. All month we've been talking about Jesus and how he turned everything upside down by humility. And if you remember, humility is simply putting others first by giving up what you think you deserve. And every day we have opportunity to show humility to the people around us. Maybe it's letting someone else pick the movie that you're going to watch that night. Or taking time to help your parents clean the house by picking up your stuff at a time where everyone has been cooped up together for weeks now. So there's all different kind of ways that you can show humility. Maybe you can think of some ways yourselves, the ways that you can do that. Really, humility just means that you think of others instead of yourself. Does that sound easy? Well, if I'm honest, that's not always easy for me to do. But it helps when we remember how Jesus showed humility for us. Now, last week we talked about how Jesus died on the cross to pay the price for our sins and then came back to life. And when Jesus came out of that tomb, he changed everything. He changed the way that people thought about God. He made a way for us to have a relationship with God without our sin being in the way. And he changed the way that people thought about how they should treat others. Now, Paul, a few years later, wrote about that in a letter that he wrote to a church in a city called Philippi. And we call this letter the book of Philippians, and we find that in the New Testament. And Paul wrote this letter for a bunch of reasons. And one of the reasons that he wrote a letter in the first place is because he could not visit the city because he was in prison for telling others about Jesus. Paul loved to remind people of Jesus' example. He wanted to encourage them to live like Jesus did. And Paul paints a beautiful picture of Jesus and his humility in Philippians chapter 2, where Paul wrote, "Don't do anything only to get ahead. Instead, be humble. Value others more than yourselves. As you deal with one another, you should think and act as Jesus did. Jesus was equal with God, but Jesus didn't take advantage of that fact. Instead, he made himself nothing. He did this by taking on the nature of a servant. He appeared as a man. He was humble and obeyed God completely. He did this even though it led to his death. When Paul wrote to the people at the church in Philippi, he wanted these early believers to remember all the ways that Jesus had put them first. And by reminding them of the ways that Jesus showed humility, Paul knew that they would be able to put each other first as well. And Paul explained that we should value others more than ourselves, just like Jesus did. You know, no one had ever shown the kind of humility that Jesus showed. Jesus had put people first, showing them love and compassion, even when no one else would. And of course, the biggest, most incredible act of humility that Jesus showed was when he gave his life for us. That single act was completely upside down from the way things that normally work, and it changed the world. Today, we can follow Jesus' example with the way that we treat the people around us, whether it's somebody that we've just met or someone we see every day of our lives. It's like our bottom line says, put others first because Jesus put you first. We can think about Jesus and remember how he put us first. And then we can choose to show the same honor, respect, and love to others that we want them to show us. We can choose to treat others the way that we want to be treated. Hey, be sure to check us out on Facebook. You can find us at Faith Outfitters, which is our children's ministry at Southern Hills Church. And as we've done for the past several weeks, we will post something each day to help reinforce this idea of humility. Have a blessed day, and remember to put others first.